Global Game Jam happened and I made another game for it. Here's a quick overview of the event for those who don't know. They give you a theme and you go and make a game about that theme, and then you upload the game and the source code to their site. It took place between January 22nd and January 28th. This year's theme was Make Me Laugh. My friend and I always go into Global Game Jam with a rough idea of a game mechanic or idea that we want to do. Last year we wanted to make something with a hoverboard. This year we wanted to try and make a Robot Wars clone. No, not the JRPG series involving various anime mecha shows, but the British TV series where homemade robots would duke it out in a small but perilous arena. Oddly, the theme was a perfect fit for our idea, with one significant change. Instead of normal-looking robots, we were going to have the bodies be a series of bizarre items that most definitely shouldn't be used in combat. And so we created our game, Rando Robo Wrecked. Not the greatest of titles, I admit, but you gotta love the alliteration. The game we made is a two-player PvP game where players select their body, which determines how many weapons will be attached to them, and the weapon itself, which is limited to two options: a knife or a rake. As you can probably guess by now, a lot of things got cut in the end, but I'll get to that later. Once the players are done making their choices, they're plopped into a 20 meter by 20 meter arena. There are two main hazards in the arena, a pit and a drop zone. If you stay in it for more than a few seconds, the drop zone will randomly drop one of two objects, a cube or an anvil. The pit is activated by a button at the topmost wall of the arena. If a player falls into the pit, it's an instant game over. That's about it for the general gameplay overview. You can play the game by either having two controllers plugged in or by using WASD and the arrow keys for a two-player, one-keyboard setup. Unfortunately, you can't have one player on controller and one player on keyboard. It's a shortcoming of how I programmed it. Alright, I can't avoid it any longer. Yes, a lot of things got cut. The lack of weapons is the most painful one. We had ideas for things like flamethrowers, spinners, and flippers. Unfortunately, getting the weapons we did have to attach to the existing bodies took longer than expected, and as such, more dynamic weapons had to be shelved. The two weapons we have are pretty simple. They stick on and have a hitbox. They don't move at all. The ones we planned needed more work that we simply didn't have the time to dedicate to. The arena was also meant to be larger with even more hazards, but was scrapped in favor of simplicity. But I would have liked to have put a flipper in. Although in that case, we cut that because we didn't properly implement a way to prevent the players from getting immobilized when they flipped over, or have some way of checking for that state to work it into the game mechanics. It was a bit of an oversight on our part. I am fairly happy with the different body types we managed to get in, but we did plan for more. We just ran out of time, unfortunately. The models that we did get in were supposed to be more animated, like the flaps on the cardboard box or the seat on the toilet animating in relation to the physics of the object. But I couldn't get it to work correctly as the node hierarchy in Godot made it difficult to know what to attach and where. Overall, it's not the worst thing I've made for a game jam, but I think we bit off more than we could chew with it. I don't really have any problems with the game feel. It's a bit wild at times, but I think that's also part of the charm. I'm just bummed out at what it could have been. To end on, let me talk about Godot for a bit. I'm going to be doing a more detailed video about Godot soon as part of my Alternatives to Unity series I said I was going to do, but I have a few things I want to complain about. The hierarchy layout and instantiating objects are the two big things that take some getting used to, going from Godot to Unity. In regards to hierarchy, some nodes require specific objects to be directly attached to them. In this project specifically, the vehicle body needed a collision shape, but with multiple very different body shapes that we had, we couldn't use a single collider, which led to us instantiating each body and parenting it manually to the vehicle body node. As such, each body the player can select behaves very differently to one another, which is not something I wanted, but we designed around it and made it work in the end. For the most part. Instantiating objects is very different to Unity. You have to load packed scenes via their directory and code, and you can't drag and drop prefabs into the inspector like Unity. It's not the end of the world, but it's worth noting. You can drag and drop items that already exist in a scene into a script at least. and I preferred doing that to using getNode, as it made setting up arrays of objects easier. Back to the subject of the vehicle body specifically. There was a long-standing issue where the wheels would sink into the ground. It took me a while to figure out why, and in searching for answers I came across bug reports on the Godot GitHub page about how this specific node was very buggy. This worried me initially, but thankfully the solution in my case was to increase the stiffness for the wheels, followed by adjusting the suspension, and some additional values thereafter. It took a fair bit of tweaking to get it to work, but I eventually found a happy medium. But you should be fairly warned that some of these nodes may not behave how you'd expect. With all that said, after dedicating some more time to learning Godot, I can at least say that the troubles I had with it the last couple of times I used it for game jams are somewhat alleviated. For getting something basic up and running in a scene, it's not too bad, and putting together a basic level for prototyping is pretty easy, mostly thanks to the wide array of primitives you can use. Am I going to use it in the future? Well, you'll have to wait for that follow-up video I mentioned. Anyway, if you want to play the game, I'll have links in the description for the Global Game Jam page and the itch.io pages where you can download it. There is a browser version, but at time of this recording it is a very stripped down version of the game. As such, I cannot recommend playing it. Download the executable and play that version instead. And if you want to watch almost all of the development process for the game, I'll have a link to the collection on Twitch in the description. In other news, after a 3-month break to work on various things, I am back working on Cyber Surfer. I have nothing new to talk about as of right now, I probably won't for several months, but I am back at it. I'm also working on some new graphics for my stream layouts. It's coming along quite nicely. As usual, I do game dev streams on Twitch, so follow me there. Subscribe for future updates, and you can support me on Ko-fi if you want. Thanks for watching, till next time.